During the Cold War, there was a magnifying competition between two adversaries, the Communist Soviet Union and the Democratic United States. Which society would prove itself to be better? With the scare of two dropped atomic bombs by the United States on Japan, countries quickly realized devastation. War seemed to sit still. No country dared to drop more atomic bombs, but they rapidly produced nuclear warheads to scare each other off and threaten. The origins of the space race started with the arms race, where the Soviet Union and the United States had many nuclear missiles and continuously produced them. The goal of the space race was to achieve superior spaceflight capability. This space race was not only a publicity stunt, but also considered important because it showed the world which country had the best science, technology, and economic system. In return, this was supposedly aimed to prove either a democratic or communist society to be better. The US and the Soviet Union also realized how important rocket research would be to the military. For context, the space race happened 10 years after the Cold War started. The space race started on October 4, 1957, when the Soviet Union successfully launched Sputnik 1, which originally meant traveler in Russian, to orbit the Earth. This shocked the public and the world because it was the first man-made object to be in space. It showed that the Soviet Union officially had a head start and that they were desperate to win. This image shows a technician putting on the finishing touches on Sputnik 1. The main objectives of sending this satellite were to provide information on the density of the atmosphere and check the principles of pressurization used on the satellites. The most important figure in the Soviet space program was Sergey Korolev. Without his leadership, the USSR may have not been as quick and successful as it had been in the beginning. Sputnik 1 fell back towards Earth and burned through the atmosphere on January 4, 1958. However, on November 3, 1957, Sputnik 2 had already been launched and the dog Laika had been brought by the Soviet Union to the Earth's atmosphere. Sputnik 2 was launched similarly to Sputnik 1. One of the cores did not separate as planned, and this inhibited the thermal control system. Some thermal insulation also tore loose. It is believed that Laika the dog survived Sputnik 2 for only 2 days instead of the planned 10 because of the heat. There was an air regeneration system that provided oxygen. Food and water were provided in a gelatinized form. Laika was put into a harness and there were electrodes to monitor her vital signs. Laika was agitated but eating her food. During this time, there was no capability of returning Laika safely, so it was planned for her to have 10 days of oxygen before running out. This mission showed that it was possible to send animals into space, and from then on, the possibility of sending humans seemed even more possible. The mission also provided scientists with data on the behavior of a living organism orbiting in a space environment. Following the launch of Sputnik 1 and 2, the United States appeared to be behind. The United States finally launched Explorer 1 on February 1, 1958, officially joining the space race. The creation of this satellite was led by Dr. Wernher von Braun and was created in the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in just 3 months. Not only was this the first US satellite, but it was the first satellite to carry science instruments. The primary instrument on Explorer 1 was a cosmic ray detector designed for measuring the radiation environment in Earth's orbit. Similar satellites, Explorer 2, 3, 4, and 5, were launched preceding the first. Explorer 2 failed after a rocket failed to ignite, and Explorer 5 failed after the rocket's booster collided with its second stage after separation. The same year Explorer 1 was launched, President Eisenhower created the National Aeronautics and Space Administration on July 29, 1958, which was a civilian agency responsible for coordinating America's activities in space, the civil space program, aeronautics research, and space research. President Eisenhower also created 2 national security-oriented space programs that would operate alongside NASA. His goal was to use satellites to gain knowledge about the Soviet Union and its allies. After that, the United States seemed to be behind the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union launched the first human into orbit, Yuri Gagarin, on the Vostok 1 on April 12, 1961. The first American to orbit was John Glenn on Mercury Atlas 6 on February 20, 1961. The Soviet Union launched the first multi-person spacecraft, Voskhod 1. on October 12, 1962. The United States launched the first U.S. multi-person spacecraft, Gemini 3, on March 23, 1965. The first spacewalk was performed on March 18, 1965, by Alexei Leonov on Voskhod 2. The first U.S. spacewalk was performed by Ed White on Gemini 4 on June 3, 1965. Then there was a turn of events for the Soviet Union. January 14, 1966 marked the death of a premier Soviet spacecraft designer and leader, Sergey Korolev. Without him, things started to go downhill for the Soviet Union. On April 23, 1967, cosmonaut Vladimir Komarov on Soyuz 1 became the first spaceflight fatality. In 1968, the Soviet probe Zond 5 became the first spacecraft to orbit the moon and return to the Earth. The U.S. also launched the first flight of the Apollo program on Apollo 7, and the first crewed flight around the moon took place on Apollo 8. The Soviet Union officially was behind the space race, while the United States made more gains. On July 3, 1969, the Soviet N-1 moon rocket exploded. Just 17 days later, on July 20, 1969, the space race had ended. The first humans landed on the moon, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, on Apollo 11. The famous words were said by Neil Armstrong as stepping on the moon. "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind."
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
The United States had effectively won and ended the space race. During this time, developments by the Soviet Union and the United States were heavily covered by national media and further encouraged by television. American astronauts were seen as American heroes, while the Soviets were portrayed as ultimate villains with their efforts to pass America and prove the power of the communist system. Following the conclusion of the space race, lunar missions were no longer of superior interest to the government or the public. During a mission in 1975, the U.S. spacecraft Apollo 18 and the Soviet spacecraft Soyuz 19 were sent to latch onto each other to develop space rescue capability. Commanders Thomas P. Stafford and Alexei Leonov shook hands and exchanged gifts in celebration of such first meeting between the Cold War adversaries in space. Back on Earth, Secretary General Kurt Waldheim of the United Nations congratulated the two superpowers for the Apollo-Soyuz test project and praised their spirit of cooperation and peace in planning. There weren't all successes in the space race, though. Many astronauts died in the process. On January 27, 1967, American astronauts Virgil Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee were killed in a fire during a launch pad test. This caused the Apollo program to be delayed for a year and a half. Today, we are still in a space race and discovering new information about the vast universe we live in. We can already see from Elon Musk that our next step is a journey to Mars. The possibilities after that are endless.